I'm hanging out with Chris and a gaggle of visitors here at the museum. It's a busy Saturday. We're 1 week away from giving away this 1936 Harley-Davidson Knucklehead. As you guys know, the Raffle's our big fundraiser here at the museum. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without you guys' support through our annual raffle. We're going to be giving this bike to a new owner, drawing the winning ticket 1 week from today. So make sure you get in if you haven't got tickets yet. Check out down below on the screen here all the products and all the ticket packages. Guys, get tickets, get a chance at taking home a piece of genuine motorcycle history. So today we're going to be firing this bike up, telling you all about it, sharing the history, but also doing an exclusive kind of museum walkthrough like we did a few days ago if some of you guys caught us on the live broadcast. So we're going to be firing up some of our favorite bikes. One of the favorites, if not the favorite right now, and the favorite changes weekly around here. Once you guys hang out often enough and you'll start to get it. But yeah, the favorite right now, this 1936 Harley-Davidson Knucklehead, hand-built right in the restoration shop for one lucky winner. We're gonna crank this thing up here right now so you can hear how your new bike sounds. We'll get this tour started. There she goes, guys. 61 cubic inches, 4-speed transmission, massaged back to life right in our restoration shop by Chris and I. Now, this bike is actually a bike that my dad restored years ago for a fellow. We were actually able to buy the bike back. Needed a full new restoration job, so Chris and I went through it head to toe, from the bottom end all the way wheel to wheel, and gave it a fresh new paint job by our guy John Dills, and one of the most beautiful 36 Harleys I've ever seen, and going to be really exciting to watch somebody hopefully ride this thing home. You don't have to be present to win, guys. So there's our wall of winners, and we've had winners from absolutely all over. We got up there: Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, New Hampshire, Missouri, Maryland, South Carolina, Florida, North Carolina. You know, we've never had an international winner. You can, or we do not limit the raffle to U.S. residents. So you guys got to check your own kind of local laws and regulations on whether you can enter or not. But we never had an international winner. Could be really exciting. Only had one lady winner. Maybe it's you. So yeah, anyway, guys, real excited. We're a week away. Follow with us. We're going to walk through, show you guys some of the things that make Wheels Through Time so special. Crank up some of our favorite bikes. Before we go anywhere, I wanted to introduce some of you guys to some of the people that make this place go. Steve behind the camera here. Steve, give a face shot. It's pretty ugly, but there he is. Chris here, you guys have met. Behind the counter, guys, we got Wendy and Tracy. It's actually Tracy's birthday today, if you can believe it or not. Yeah, so really awesome. Over here is Judy, guys, and these are the ladies, the first faces you see when you come to Wheels Through Time. So when you guys come next time, make sure you come say, hey, you've already been introduced. These ladies will fix you up, treat you right. They're some of the folks that make this place go round and round and make it as special of a place it is. So come on with us. We're going to run through the museum. You guys all please hang with us if you want to. Yeah, going to crank up all sorts of motorcycles today. So, and this is Miss Karen. So Karen is hospitality management right here at the museum. So one of also the first faces you see when you come in. So next time you guys are here, make sure you say hey. So coming into the building here, for those of you guys that have never been here to the museum, 375, almost 400 of America's rarest motorcycles ever produced. No place like this in the world, and big focus on several things. We always say this place is about bikes with character, bikes with personality, bikes with great stories. So much originality here. At the same time as there's original condition stuff, there's amazing restorations here to kind of give you a better insight of what these bikes look like coming right off the assembly line. The big theme here is that everything runs. So Everything you're going to see today, if it's got 2 wheels and a motor and it's a complete bike, fires up and goes. When normal day here at the museum, we probably fire up 15, 20 different machines. We keep that revolving, so every time you come, you're going to hear something else run. We're in our 4-cylinder exhibit here right now. So the 4 cylinders, first American 4-cylinder was the Pierce motorcycle. It's 1909 to 1912. Henderson, after that, quickly entered the fold and kind of took over as far as production of the highest class machines. And we talked a little bit about the Henderson in the last live we did. That my dad he fired up the 17. My dad ran coast to coast in 97. If we get a chance here later on in the broadcast, we'll get back to that one and fire it up again. So here, kind of a scattering of some of the rarest 4-cylinders out there. 1928 Henderson. By the way, guys, this is Andy. Everybody knows Andy. You're not getting out of here. So Andy, guys, if you've been to the museum, undoubtedly you've met Andy. He sure is. Andy loves being on camera.
He's French from England. So.
Are you guys know each other?
No.
Now you're friends.
We've been finding out about tremor coils and electric starts and how the English invented Rolls-Royce. You used to decompress the Rolls-Royce because one of the cylinders were about to go up on fire, and then you press the button. Then
you didn't press the button, you just switched on the trembler coil, and then one of the spark plugs would ignite one of the cylinders, and then you didn't need a starter motor. So Rolls-Royce, didn't need to crank. You cranked it just to pull the...
Crank it just to get it right towards top dead center.
Pull the petrol into the cylinders.
Okay.
Shut the decompressions on the top, and then
hit the spark. There you go.
Hit the spark. One and have it.
See, we learn new stuff here every day. I'm telling you, this is great.
Where did Rolls-Royce come from?
Well, Charles Ross came from Monmouth.
Wales. Okay.
See, this guy's pride of country. So, well, man, pleasure to have you guys in. Andy will make you guys a cup of tea, too.
Oh, we've had that.
Sure thing. Well, pleasure to meet you guys. Nice to meet you. Well, so come on with us, guys. Like I said, Andy, best storyteller there ever was. An absolute anchor here at the museum. One of the things, or one of the people that make this place as special as it is. So when you come in next time, make sure you introduce yourself to Andy, and he'll show you around. Ask him about the Trob 1916 motorcycle found behind the wall. It's his favorite story to tell. So come on over here. We're going to crank up one of the 4-cylinders. This one we've got fuel in right now. It's a 1939 4-cylinder Indian. Now, the 4-cylinders, like I said, started with Pierce and then quickly go to Henderson. Henderson operates in Detroit from 1912 to 1917 and produces, like I said, the highest class machines out there. And the Henderson brothers actually sold to Excelsior. They ended up working for Excelsior for a couple years. They quit, moved to Philly, started making Aces. Several years later, Indian ends up buying Ace, and eventually culminates their 4-cylinder production with this engine, this being a 1939 model, so last year for the rigid frame. It's one of the best sounding motorcycles ever produced, and one of the best riding motorcycles ever produced. So fingers crossed she cranks right up. What a sweetie. Just one smooth machine. I always say they're kind of like, it's kind of like riding a boat. Yeah. An Indian 4-cylinder. You get this twins and you got that kind of jerkiness. The 4-cylinders are so ultra smooth. Such an even distribution of power, no vibration.
Well, I rode that one for the first time a couple of years ago, and it's just amazing. They had great top end speed, but on the bottom end too, just the torque. As soon as you roll into the throttle, the power's there, and you just take off. And like you said, just a smooth operation.
It's so modern. Yeah. It's why they stopped making 4-cylinders in America in 1942. I mean, obviously World War II had to do with the halt in civilian production, why Indian never picked up with it again. Expensive machine to produce, but at the same time, how many years? You know, what are the first 4-cylinder in America? I think after Indian might have been like Modus, maybe 10 years ago. So, guys, live broadcast. The reason we're here today, we're 1 week away from our annual raffle. We're going to be finding a new home, drawing a winning ticket for that 36 gold and black Knucklehead right out front. Really excited to draw that winner, man. It's our big fundraiser. It is literally, we work so hard all year. It all culminates with that event next Saturday. So really excited. Make sure down below, guys, there's all of our ticket packages. Help support the museum. The walkthrough today is kind of show you guys what your contribution to our annual raffle supports. So we would not be able to do what we do and operate like we do here at the museum without our annual raffle. So as we're walking through, you guys got questions, you see something in the background you're wondering about, let us know, write it in the comments. Definitely going to try to answer as many as we can. We've got kind of a slate of bikes here that we're going to fire up throughout the museum, whole different group of bikes than we fired up on our last live. So hang with us. Like I said, if you got questions, don't be shy, guys.
Yeah, so we got people coming in from Australia, Denmark, Canada, all across the U.S. So guys, share the video if you're watching right now. Get as many people in here as you can. Like Matt said, ask all the questions you want. I've got that here. Somebody asked just a minute ago about the rug underneath the raffle bike. The winner does get to take that home. That makes it easier to convince your wife that you can put this thing in the living room.
Or husband.
Yeah, or husband. True.
Or
I don't
husband.
want to be sexist there. But that way you can put it in the living room when you're not riding it. It makes a great display piece. So
We always
get your
say,
tickets down below.
It makes a great living room bike. You just need to make sure the path to the door is clear because the thing is made to be ridden. Yeah, so anyway, also, guys, another common question, which I don't know if it's been addressed yet.
Yep, somebody just asked.
So the taxes on the motorcycle. Wheels Through Time actually pays the taxes on the bike. So we've seen over the course of the year and years, a lot of comments from folks, I would love to enter. I could never afford the taxes on the bike. Well, the good news is you don't have to. Wheels Through Time pays the taxes for you guys. So really excited. All you need is $10 for a ticket. Got all sorts of packages, 3 for 20, 7 for 50, 16 tickets for 100. And as you go up, guys, with the $50 package and above, you start getting all sorts of cool swag. So make sure you get your tickets, because if you're not in it, you can't win it. Yeah. So come on over this way, guys. I got a really cool one to fire up for you. Now, as you're roaming through the museum, if you guys have never been here before, it's not chronological. It doesn't start in 1900 or 1901 and work its way through history. That being said, there's countless exhibits throughout the museum, from big to small, that really help you kind of understand the pathway of American motorcycles and how we got from point A to, say, maybe point wherever we're at right now. It's sure not Z. So yeah, so military, we've behind you, we got our teens era motorcycle shop. We call it the Shaber's Cycle Shop. Almost all original motorcycles dating back to 1903 is our earliest bike in this exhibit. That's 1903 Indian. It's probably one of the first couple hundred American motorcycles ever produced. My dad actually raced that thing. Check that photo out down there, Steve. My dad actually raced this bike in the Barber Century race in 2006 and 7 and 8, maybe even 2009, and won the race a couple times. Now, the race of the century, guys, 100-year-old and older bikes only out on the world-class Barber Motorsports track. It's maybe 2.3, 2.4 miles, world-class track, 100-something-year-old equipment, top speed 50 miles an hour, 1.5-inch wide tires. This one was crowned champion a couple of years. So really, really cool machine. Original condition other than the wheels. So speaking of Indians, one of my favorite Indians is the Chop right behind us here, guys. Now, Chopper Graveyard exhibit, my dad and I came up with the Chopper Graveyard exhibit maybe in 2007, 2008 maybe, and really wanted to kind of show some of the bones of what used to be and some of what survived as far as the chopper scene goes. So, you know, customization in America has always been a part of motorcycling, really since the earliest days. You know, you've got the chopper scene. Before that, it was bobbers, and before that, we call the bikes Cutdowns. So the whole idea, modify the bike to suit your needs. So in the chopper graveyard exhibit, you've got kind of dozens of carcasses and then some real original survivors. One of my favorite is the Coke bike over here. The Coke bike built in 1970, I think 1975, by Ron Finch and David Cargill. So really neat deal. My dad found that bike at a swap meet, and it was mostly all taken apart, and ended up buying the project, bringing it back to Wheel Shoe Time, putting it all back together. So this one here, the Indian I was telling you about, I actually built this Indian in 2014 for the Born Free show in Southern California. My guys, good pals Mike and Grant, Mike Davis and Grant Peterson started the Born Free show. I think right now they're maybe in their 14th or 15th year. I was fortunate to be invited to build a bike in this was 2014. So decided, you know what, the level of talent at that show and the builders that they have is so remarkable. Best chopper builders, and started out as a chopper show. It's evolved into more of a custom show now, but some of the best customizers in the world, period. Just really a level of talent that far exceeds what I do. Everything I do, man, all these stuff, these guys figured this stuff out 100 years ago. So I decided, you know what, I better not build a Harley, because all these guys build Harleys and what they're doing is next level. So I decided to build an Indian and really kind of breathe my best inspiration of a 1970s Indian chopper and bring that to the show. So had it painted up by my pal John Dills, and Dills Paintworks. He painted 100 bikes for us here at the museum. My good buddy who no longer is with us, Sportster Gary Michael, from Georgia, actually polished and chromed almost every piece of this motorcycle that's not painted. Beautiful rabbit ear bars, chromed the wheels, springs, shackles, trees, headlight. Goodness, I mean, chrome the hub. Actually, that's an aluminum hub. Polish the hub. Polish these crazy Indian heads that now the fins are paper thin. Pipes that run inboard and come inside the fender there. Chrome shocks and brake rods, kicker arms. So much detail as I could put into it. Make it as shiny as you can. So in that Southern California sun, they couldn't pick out all my crappy welds and stuff like that. So anyway, we're going to fire this one up. 1942, this is what we call a Bonneville engine. Indian produced the Bonneville in Bonneville Chief might have started maybe 1935 or 6. One of you Indian guys might be able to better correct me on that. So, but the Bonneville engine, higher compression, little hotter cams, and pop-up pistons, probably some port work. So here we go. Love this thing. Great sound out of those pipes, and funky, cool police shifter here from this like 1935 Indian Chief style shifter that's right inside of your leg. Right hand shift, left hand throttle, so you kind of got to ride it like this. But yeah, this thing actually, all these years, I probably only put maybe 100 or 150 miles on this thing. So I had some great helps from some great friends building this machine. Really like probably most of the chops out there, guys. None of us do it really by ourselves, and so many hands in helping make this bike as special as it is to me, and a key part of our graveyard exhibit here. So not just old motorcycles here, not just original stuff. There's choppers, there's race bikes, there's oddities. We love them all. So 2, 3 wheels.
So
that's
somebody
all that
asked a
matters.
question we hadn't got before, was how many bikes with sidecars do we have in the museum and which one's our favorite? So in my head, I counted up around 13.
13 bikes with
We've got the
sidecars.
2 bikes outside,
So we got
the 32 and
the
your flatty.
32 and the flatty. We've got the 41 knuckle and the 40 flathead. There's 4.
Yeah.
We've got
So then I was thinking we got the World War, we've got the World War II flathead.
yep, the World War II UL,
Yeah,
the UA.
the 17 or the 18.
18 sidecar, the 16 sidecar that you drive from the sidecar.
Yeah.
We've got going over that way. We have the JD with the side van,
yeah.
side, the moonshine runner.
And then the police, with the big the canopy there that had all the stuff on it.
Yeah, the 25 JDCB. We've got the Dayton sidecar and the Thor sidecar.
Yep.
We got the Flexi sidecar.
2 Flexis.
2 Flexi sidecars.
2 jack pines.
So that's 13.
Yeah.
We've got, I lost count almost. So we got 3 Jack Pine sidecars
that's
with the
right.
Sportster. So there's 16.
16.
We have a matchless here. We keep it outside. It's British. No, I'm just kidding. We do have a matchless though, so I guess that counts.
Yeah,
17, and then we got the 55 sidecar.
Yeah, we just got that one, yeah.
The original paint 55. So that's 18 sidecar motorcycles, and I might be forgetting something.
Yeah.
So
which one- which-
we've got a VL sidecar right over here. That's one of the few bikes in here that doesn't run.
Yeah.
The VL side hack. That's it. 19, and then
Yeah, more
goodness, I think we got 19 sidecars.
That's more than I thought. So now, which was
It's a
your
lot.
favorite?
So which one's my favorite? Gosh, you know what? That's a very tough call. It would be between probably 3 sidecars for me, and I have favorites around every corner. For me personally, the blue 1940 ULH sidecar up front. I grew up riding in that sidecar. My
There's
dad.
so many pictures of you and your dad at swap meets when you were a kid. riding
My
around.
dad used to, when I was 5, my dad and I jumped in that sidecar. We lived in Mount Vernon, Illinois, drove all the way to Wasion, Ohio, got the long distance award for the antique bike show. We'd ride that thing to Wasion, ride that thing to Davenport. So that one is definitely a favorite. There's my 41 ULH outside, because that's what me and my wife and my kids go running around the mountains, and we give kids rides in that
Yeah.
thing every day here at the museum, so it's probably the most used out of all of our sidecars. Then the Flexi sidecar in back, which we'll point out to you, the 1919 Harley Davidson Flexi. That bike, incredible history, 1926 national champion, pretty in as raced, original condition. Found some great history on that over the years, which we've done some great YouTube content on. It was also my wife and I's first road trip. So shortly after her and I started dating, we jumped in a truck and drove all the way to Battle Creek, Michigan. So a lot of closeness there. But I'm sure if we walked up to each sidecar, we'd have a great story about it. So, and that's one of the things that makes this place as special as it is, guys. There are great stories surrounding every motorcycle. We always kind of joke and say every bike's got at least 2 stories. There's the story of who rode it and raced it and bought it and sold it. Then there's the story of how it got here, and it's all really, really neat, compelling stuff. So, all right, on to...
So Jeff Allen, like 3 times in the comments at DAH.
You want to hear the DAH run, Jeff? Okay. All right. You've been here every day for the past 2 weeks, Jeff. So
could've
we're
done it in
wondering where
person.
you were at today. So you got that quart of oil still?
I do, right here,
All right.
yeah.
I got a 1/2-inch wrench. Jeff wants to hear a DAH run. For those of you guys that hadn't heard of a DAH, 1930, Harley Davidson jumps into producing a factory racing overhead valve 45 to be able to compete with Excelsior and Indian. Now, walk with me real quick. So I'm gonna keep Jeff in suspense here. You're gonna have to wait. So, anyway, 1928, Excelsior and Indian go to producing special overhead valve 45 cubic inch jobs. 1927, they came out with a 45 class. So Excelsior makes 24 of these overhead valve jobs. And this one here is number 3. It's actually the national champion bike from 1929 and 1930, ridden by a guy named Gene Ryan. And this one is the prototype for the 24 of these.
So happy your girls said hello.
Oh, who did?
Your girls.
My girls?
Yeah.
They're watching?
They're watching.
Hey, guys. All right. Thanks for watching, y'all. We got the whole family in today. So, so incredibly rare motorcycles. This was actually designed by Andy Coslow, who worked for Excelsior, and Arthur Constantine. This was Andy Coslow's personal motorcycle. My dad got this from Bob Coslow, Andy's son, grandson, and pretty much as race condition. Ultra high compression, like 15 to 1, alcohol burners, 50, 60 horsepower, just incredible motorcycles. This one here was ridden by a guy named Gene Ryan. Now we're gonna get to that DAH in a minute, so keep your head on, Jeff. But so much incredible history revolving around this motorcycle, and like I mentioned, every bike in here has a story. The history is really the most important part of it all. Without the history and the human element, it's just a piece of metal. It's the history that makes it special. So this bike, raced by Gene Ryan, Mount Garfield, 1929 and 1930. So over the years, my dad collected all sorts of great memorabilia and found, aside from this bike, found this bike, and then in a separate place, he actually found the original press release. He bought this with a pile of Schwinn documents, and Schwinn owned Excelsior at this time. So with a pile of Schwinn documents, and this is the original press release from the company from this event. Gene Ryan's the new national hill climb champion, Mount Garfield, Muskegon, Michigan, August 17th, 1930. And incredibly cool pencil drawing with Gene, animation of Gene kind of with the crown on top of the hill. And then this piece, which he was incredibly proud of, found this in another location. And this, it's a whiskey flask, and it says Super X, that's the model of the motorcycle or the brand of the bike. GR, there's his initials, and then it has Mount Garfield, Muskegon, Michigan, August 17th, 1930. So the original press release, the national championship winning motorcycle, and then this is probably like the manufacturer's, like, pat your best rider on the back. Here you go, Gene, have a swig. So engraved with his initials and everything. So that's one of the things about the museum here. As you roam, there is so much here. And the deeper you look, the more you see. So special experimental models right in front of you there. I was telling you about the overhead valve 45 cubic inch job. This is kind of an experimental Harley, one of just a handful known, that combined 3 or 4 different engines to get into that class that they came out with in 27. So then over this way, guys, and we're going to circle back around to that DAH Harley. We've got the Altoona overhead 45 Indian here, which was Indian's counterpart to that Excelsior. Now, these are 1928s. This one and those 2 Excelsiors over there. This is a ball bearing, twin cam, overhead valve, hemispherical combustion chamber, super high compression, alcohol burner with the big barrel carburetor here, in-out box transmission, so same box almost as their 3-speed. Well, this is actually a factory special hill climb only transmission with a single speed, so there's only 1 gear in that big box, and that gear was go. So yeah, the Indian Altoona, very, very special bike. So circling back this way and around the hill, guys, hill climb exhibit here at the museum. One of the highlights of the museum. It's a mountain with 60 to 80 tons of dirt and rock on the hill here. Some of the rarest factory hill climbers ever produced. Now, hill climbing in America, you know, you see it really grow in popularity through the 1920s, and starting early on, you've got track racing. Starting early, you really have like endurance racing, time trials, mileage economy tests. 1909, board track racing starts to take hold. A guy named Jack Prince started building tracks all around the country, and manufacturers jumped in, putting their best equipment on these tracks with their best riders to try and take home trophies and get your name in the paper, because when you win on Sunday, you sell on Monday. So as time moves forward, the tracks kind of fall in disrepair, and then you kind of move into the dirt track scene. At the same time, hill climbing becomes a new big sport. So factories, manufacturers would put in huge amounts of resources into producing very limited numbers of factory-built specials. 1928 Harley Davidson FH, that's a 61 cubic inch job. Another 1924, 25-ish Harley Davidson FH, and an all special frame, very, very neat machine. And then of course, the 1930 Harley Davidson DAH here. They made 20 of these bikes, and this one is number 9 of the 20 built. The one in front of it is actually number 10. So these two bikes are consecutively numbered factory-built specials. They only built 20 of, original condition, and a 100-point restoration by world-renowned restorer Steve Hunsinger. So incredibly special, as it would have left the factory. You see that really cool trailing link fork there. It's kind of a neat piece. Only the earliest ones, I believe, had this trailing link fork. It kind of changes the suspension action into what a leaf spring trailing link. Well, what I mean by trailing link is where the location of that axle is. So in relation to your fork legs and the pivot on that rocker, the axle's in back. So as you move forward, it actually is allowed to give instead of having to just bounce over the bumps. So in theory, it's kind of a superior design. Harley riders weren't crazy about that, and by the time maybe 8 to 10 of those are produced, they basically take the same fork and run it with straight legs. So this one's been all reinforced, and really, really special stuff though. So this bike, do you think you could run over and grab that gas can right off the deal there? So this bike here, we run it occasionally. And we always say there's bikes you run here regularly, bikes we run here occasionally, and bikes we run here very rarely. This machine is kind of in that in-between zone. We don't run it for long. It's made big compression. This thing is made to run wide open all the time. Smokes a little bit, breathes a little fire. Thank you, Chris. Smokes a little bit, breathes a little fire. Always puts on a show. Has an incredible sound, and the crazy part is you really don't get fully keyed into that sound until the thing is wide open. So I'll try and wick it up pretty good for you. I'm gonna go ahead and drain the sump here and make sure there's not too much oil on the lower end. And you guys hang with us. So
yeah,
Chris, what's the feed look like there?
Hey, it's going great. We got people, guys. Feel free again to drop questions in there. And remember, we're coming live today. We've got one more week till one of you is going to be taking home the 2024 Wheels for Time raffle bike, 1936 Harley Davidson Knucklehead, and that beautiful factory custom gold and black. You can get your tickets down below, or you can go to winthisbike.com right now. Get your tickets. Only have to have one ticket to win. But increase your chances. Get all that you can, and know that you're going to be supporting Wheels Through Time. Every donation, every ticket purchase stays right here at Wheels Through Time. And like Matt said, there's so much here. It's layers deep. We talk to folks all the time who come and visit the museum, and every time they come, they find something new that they didn't see the last time they came. So you guys want to share your visit? You guys were just here a few months ago, right?
We come up at least 4 or 5 times a year.
4 or 5 times a
You're
year.
on your donorships.
Fantastic. So guys, so these are some of our lifetime donors. We hadn't really talked about that in either one of the streams. So we have our lifetime donor program. And so that starts at $1,000, and there's a couple of other levels. And that gets you some tickets for the raffle bike. It also gets you lifetime admission for yourself and 3 other friends to come to the museum anytime you want. You get a limited edition print done by David Uhl. As we've been walking around, you've probably seen some of the beautiful paintings that David has done a lot of them featuring bikes right here at Wheels Through Time. And so you get one of those, and you also just get the knowledge that you're helping to continue to support this place and you help to fuel the museum that runs. So
You get the t-shirt, you
get the t-shirt and the pin. Yeah, so these guys are a great demonstration. We didn't even plan this. They're just here. This is what we love about you guys as our lifetime donors, is that, you know, it's not just something you do and forget about, but you guys come,
we come up here
and
4 or
come to
5 times
visit.
a year.
Fantastic. And
here.
so, and we were just talking about, you see something new every time, right?
Yes, you do.
You do. So what's, you know, so if you had to pick a favorite bike or a favorite exhibit in the museum, what would it be?
All of them.
All of them. You're the same. You want a job? You're doing the same thing that we do.
I mean, they're all special in their own way. You know,
Yeah.
they all represent something that in our history.
Yeah.
So
That's right. And it's like, and I think, you know, the one thing that people miss is that, you know, the evolution of motorcycling, it was progressive, but it's like even early on, these guys were producing machines that made a lot of power. You know, in the first 10 or 15 years, you know, Harley, these other companies are putting out machines with 1,000 cc's. So it wasn't that they were primitive. Really, their only limitation was the metal and the equipment that they had. And if they had had more, they would have been a lot further along. But just to kind of see how every generation kind of built on the next one, and continuing that path down through history. So, well, fantastic, guys. Thank you guys for coming in. We appreciate it. Okay. So, guys, yeah, so Matt's still getting that then. So, Jeff, you got to wait just a little bit longer. We're just teasing this in anticipation here. So,
I think we're ready to run.
You ready to run? All right,
Just need paper
fantastic.
towels to wipe my hands off. Okay, so one of the few places in the world you can hear a Harley Davidson DAH run. Another pal of mine, David Reedy in Melbourne, Australia, actually has a few DAHs as well, and actually runs them. So as far as I know, maybe 2 places that you can hear an authentic example of one of these. Fire up and go. So I've got the sump drained, Chris. I'm gonna put a little gas in it, and we're gonna try and fire this guy off. So, all right.
Now, did you talk about this at the Harley, the statue out front?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Yeah, so if any of you guys have been to the Harley Davidson Museum there in Milwaukee, you've seen a sculpture of this bike. Jeff Decker did an amazing sculpture out there in front of the museum of the DAH bike, of the guy going up on the hill climb and up and over. So what you see there in that sculpture is a DAH motorcycle, this factory hill climber that Harley built for their team. So one, you know, there's so many bikes in here, and as I tell a lot of people who visit the museum, Dale and Matt's purpose in this collection is not just about having a lot of motorcycles here, but of the most rare and significant and special motorcycles. And so when you look at the DAH is one of those pivotal bikes, one of those moments in time where, when you look back at the history of American motorcycling, is one that sets apart above everything else. Yep. So, yeah. Well, guys, while he's, I'm going to, so while Matt's finishing doing that, I'm going to drop this stuff down right here. Guys, continue to put stuff in the chat. I'll pick it back up here in just a second. And so somebody asked about my favorite bike in the museum, so this ties in very well. So I always tell people I have favorites in every exhibit, because that's kind of the token answer we have around here. But if I had to pick a couple of favorites, one would be this bike, because this is one of my personal bikes. Some of you guys who watch our YouTube channel saw that recently Matt helped me finish up a 1942 Big Twin Flathead, and that's because I've been riding this for a number of years, and I got to work on Dale and restoring this bike when I first came to the museum. And this is a 1950 Harley 45. And so, but the problem is with the 45s is from the factory, they were never that fast. And so when I would go out riding with Matt, Steven, and the rest of the guys, they were all on Big Twin Flatheads, Knuckleheads, so I was always at the tail end of the pack. But this is still one that's very close to my heart just because of the work that I got to do with Dale on this bike. Now, the fun thing about 45s, Matt talked about this in the last live stream. You know, if you were a guy in the 30s and 40s when these bikes came out, this is the bike that everybody started on because it was the least expensive of the Harley bikes. And even though they didn't have a lot of top end speed, they're so lightweight, they're easy to ride, they're fun to ride because you can just whip the bike around. So I still love getting back on this machine and going out and riding it. But I have to say, my big twin flathead, there's just nothing like getting on a big twin, rolling into the throttle and having all the power and all the speed that you could want in a motorcycle. See if you guys have any more questions here. Look down through here. So, guys, thank you again for joining us. Matt's almost finished up over here. We're going to get this bike trained up. And so this is live. If you come here to the museum, this is what we do every day. We're firing up bikes all the time. And, when people come in, you're going to hear bikes from all different eras of time. In all different genres. You're going to hear hill climbers, you're going to hear board track racers, you're going to hear road bikes, choppers, and even some of the early stuff. It's not just on special occasions when we're doing lives that we do this. This is something we do each and every day here at the museum. That's why we call it the museum that runs. So if you guys have never been here, you've got one more week to make it here for this season. If you don't make it here, we'll reopen back next year in April, the first Thursday in April. So go ahead, plan your trip now. We're ready for you guys to come visit the museum. Maggie Valley, North Carolina. All right. Last time somebody pointed out, we kept talking about the museum, and we just fail to remember sometimes. Maggie Valley, North Carolina. Go ahead, plan your trip and be here.
All right. Wouldn't hurt to grab a fire extinguisher. Yep. Never hurts. We have the new fire suppression system, guys. Thanks to you guys. Spilled a little bit of gas on the ground. We're going to go ahead and turn the fuel on this thing. So actually, one of the things I noticed last video we did was somebody asked in the comments, why do you tap on the carburetor? And the reason for that is very simple, and there's the reason. So when you drain a bike for a while and there's nothing in the float bowl, these bikes, especially the race bikes, didn't run a fuel filter. So if any sort of trash gets down into the float bowl from that fuel line, has the potential for that little bit of trash or dirt to get in between the needle and the seat. So that prevents the float from actuating all the way and sealing off the fuel. So a little bit of vibration oftentimes to the float bowl will be enough to dislodge anything that's causing that to keep the float from seating. So had the problem with this one, so here we go. We're going to fire it up with the fuel off, and usually just a couple kicks with this thing. This bike is super high compression, but it has great valve overlap, so static compression is not really that high, or is that not that much resistance as you kick the engine, or as you kick the kicker pedal and spin the engine through, but the compression ratio is very, very high. So, all right. How many kicks? Leave it in the comment.
Jeff said 5.
Everybody. Jeff says 5 kicks. I'm going to choke it twice.
Yep.
And
don't
then
count those.
Then it's going to fire up on the first kick. All right.
Oh.
Choke it once. 2. 3. Woo, there's the 4th, Jeff. I think you're right. Here we go. So we're going to do that again. I just, it was cleaning out there for the first little bit, which was probably from over floating it. And now the float is still stuck. Son of a gun. All right, well, we're gonna do it again, and it's probably gonna do just the same as it did. Ready? There you go, guys. So, doesn't sound anything like you'd think one would sound. You know, those short, stubby pipes, it kind of a hollow sound, but stock 45, factory 45. Now, keep in mind, we're running that thing on gas and not on alcohol, so it would be even more potent than it was. So, pretty awesome stuff. Now, guys, of course, it's been I don't know, it's been every bit of 6 months, maybe 8 months since we've run that DAH, and I think we're going to run it a little more often. So we got a whole week plus 9 days more. We're open here at the museum. We'll be firing that one up every day. So if you're watching the live and you can get down here, for any of you guys who want to come back and hear that thing again, come check it out. So 1930 Harley Davidson DAH. So since we're on hill climbers, let's go to the big one over there. And this one is
The ankle breaker.
the ankle breaker. So Chris, you want to start it? Come on this way, guys. So this one here, 80 cubic inch side valve. Now this is a West Coast national champion ridden by a fella named Joe Erb. And this is a really incredible motorcycle. So, and like we were saying, as you move around the hill climbers, some of the best factory built specials, period. And the machine at hand is the only known example like this. It's got the big flathead engine, lower end, and actually was updated with aluminum heads. They came out with these types of heads in 1940. In-out box, it was what we call a spaghetti frame. These chassis were actually used for maybe the second part of production of the Harley Davidson DAH there. So this one is the only one we know. There's just a handful of these chassis out there in the world today. This one is the only one that we know that has the big 80 cubic inch engine in it. So overhead valve, 45 cubic inch, or the 45 cubic inch expert class is likely what each of these, like the Excelsiors I pointed out, would have been a part of, or the DAH. And then this one would be in the big 80 cubic inch Class A setup. So this one, if you don't kick it right, it'll take your leg off. And both Chris and I have been bitten a few times. I've ridden this bike once, and it was absolutely the most potent. Oh, good, it's already got fuel in it. Excellent. Thanks, Chris. It is absolutely the most potent machine on this hill. 80 cubic inches is an absolute ton of torque. And I've ridden the bike once. It scared the absolute daylights out of me. And hopefully it'll kick right off today. So, okay. Here we go. A little gas. Okay, there's a lot of gas. Come on now. Ooh. See this thing, the way they kick is it's got this ratchet gear on the kick or on the kicker, and it's on the kick gear itself. It's like a quadrant, so you have so many degrees of teeth, and you kick that thing and you keep it out of the way, because if it backfires and your kicker arm teeth are engaged, that's where you end up over there. So. Guys, so that's a horse of a different color right there. That one will, you imagine sitting at the bottom of a straight up 500-foot hill and pointing something like that up there is single speed. So this is a really cool transmission, and I only know of maybe a handful of these transmissions that exist, period. And basically what it is it sits on the same platform, but it's basically an abbreviated box, where a normal transmission, you've got a main shaft and a counter shaft, right? That transmission doesn't even have a counter shaft. So the case itself isn't even made that it would contain a counter shaft. Now, like these over here, you can build one of those. It's like a standard box. That's a single speed, and we'd have to pull the lid off, look inside to see if it even has a counter shaft. This one, all it has is a main shaft and a main drive gear, and then a shifter dog that locks the main drive gear to the main shaft and brings it to the output. So there's nothing in there. It's a yeah, there's nothing in there. You slap that thing into gear and ease off on the clutch or drop the clutch, and you can see, guys. I mean, it's just incredible. These guys going up and over, riding one wheel up a 500-foot hill. So some of the most storied hill climbers anywhere in the world, right here on the hill at Wheelstrew Time. So how we doing over there, man? Any questions?
Good.
Anything anybody's wondering about?
No, not yet. Yeah,
Okay.
So, yeah, we think we've answered it. Well, actually, Jeff asked about this one. What's the horsepower you asked?
Horsepower on that, it's tough to know. Being that it's basically a one-off factory machine, it's not like you can go back through the books and say this bike was producing X amount of horsepower. It's certainly Harley's highest torque machine, and probably horsepower machine too. How are you guys doing? Are you enjoying everything? You guys like motorcycles? All right, you're in the right place. Cool, all right, man, good deal. Get them started early, that's right.
When did you start?
When did I start riding? So I started riding, I think I was probably 2.5 or 3 years old. My dad, when he was a Harley Davidson dealer in the 80s, he took on Yamaha also, when there was a lot of trouble with Harley Davidson. Wasn't able to get bikes, the company was having labor disputes, so he ended up taking on Yamaha, and the three-wheeler market is one of the things that kept him in business throughout that period of time. And they made this, I don't know what the example or what the model number is, but it's a little yellow and red 50cc three-wheeler. And got photos of me probably 2.5, 3 years old on that thing, and it had a kill switch on the back with a string attached to it. And he would hold the string, and if I got to doing something dumb, he'd just yank the string. So it's been a long time, so that's 39 years, I suppose, that I've been riding. So probably did. Yeah. It's yeah. So it was probably 5 years old when I became untethered. So says a PW50 and a BW80 and XR100, things like that. So
somebody asked in the comments, what's the last day to get raffle tickets? Last day to get raffle tickets online at winthisbike.com is next Friday at 11:59 p.m. That's the cutoff for online raffle ticket sales. So you can get those there. If you're going to be here on raffle day, you can get those the morning of. But if you're going to do it online, if you can't be here, you got to do that on Friday before midnight Eastern Standard Time.
yeah, it's coming up fast, guys. The whole year flew by. I mean, it's crazy. I feel like we just finished building that bike. Chris and I poured a ton of love into my bike, and my dad before that. Very, very special machine. We're excited to find it a new home. We're a little bit sad that it's leaving. So the winter, if you so decide to let Chris or I put miles on it for you while you're waiting to come pick it up, we're glad to do it. Just putting that out there. So yeah, by the way, guys, also make sure down below we got all of our ticket packages. Check out winthisbike.com if you don't see them down below, guys. Get your tickets. It's what supports this place, keeps it growing, keeps us building new exhibits, evolving the experience for you guys to enjoy here. So for those of you guys that have been here before, always something new here at the museum. So how many of you guys have been here before? You guys been here before?
First time.
First time for you guys? First time? Awesome. Where are you from?
Northwest Ohio,
Okay.
around Toledo area.
Toledo
South of
area?
Toledo.
Will you ever hear of Wasion Antique Bike Meet?
Yeah.
We go to
I've been there
Wasion
once.
every year.
I wanted to go again this past year and didn't make it.
It's one of my favorite places to be. Yeah, it really
Yeah.
is, man.
Yeah, I
So
wanted.
maybe we'll head out next
Yeah,
year.
I wanted to get out there again and start looking for some stuff.
Well, man, it's the place to be. It's the place to be. How about you guys? Where are you from?
Cleveland, Tennessee.
Cleveland, Tennessee. All right. Good deal, guys. Thanks for coming over. Sure, that was a chilly. I bet you had to come over through the 441.
Yes.
Yeah, so guys, the right now after the floods, I-40 was washed out, so you can't get from here. It's never thought it would be one of those places where people are like, you can't get there from here, but it's kind of a thing now. So anyway, I-40 is closed down at the time, so the way from Tennessee side to get to Maggie Valley, you go through Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, going over 441 through the national park, or you could take the long way up 81 to Johnston City, Tennessee, and take I-26 into Asheville and then shoot over from there. They're saying I-40 though, so for those of you guys thinking about visiting next year, I-40 is going to be open one lane in each direction right around New Year's Day. So plan your trip. We'll be here waiting for you.
We came 64 and 74.
Okay, did you? Oh yeah, so you Cleveland, Tennessee. You guys came over from Chattanooga area. Yeah, awesome. Well, that's a nice ride too.
Beautiful ride.
Yeah, chilly in the morning though.
yeah.
You're not kidding. It's that time of year, guys. It's like right where we live here in the mountains. You know, by noon it's 65 degrees, and by 5 p.m. it's about 50. You know, yeah. So it's cools off in the evenings, cold in the mornings. Beautiful riding though. And it's about the time of year to come because there's a lot less traffic on the roads than in the summertime. So speaking of traffic on the roads, one of my favorite bikes to ride is this 1950 Harley Davidson Panhead. It's a model FL. I picked this up from my friend Mark in Moorhead, Kentucky, actually. And Mark gave me a call. Picked up the phone probably 8:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. And Moorhead, Kentucky's 4 hours away. I think I made it in 3 hours and 45 minutes. So this is a 1950 model FL, 74 cubic inch Panhead. Second year for the glide fork. This bike's almost completely original. It's finished in a real pretty color called Riviera Blue. Put a lot of miles on this in the last year and a half or so that I've owned the bike. Runs excellent. It's got one of those pretty blue Harley Davidson peaked windshields like Sean broke on his Panhead over there. He's been trying to talk me out of this windshield here for a couple weeks. I think it's good where it's at.
Yeah, I think it's going to stay there.
It's going to stay there. So yeah, guys, this one here, very capable motorcycles. By the time you get to the Harley Davidson Panhead, you just get on these things and ride them down the road, guys. You know, the interstate speed cruiser and really agile and maneuverable bike. Still got the rigid rear end, which we love. Pogo seat posts to take out all the bumps. And then that glide front end really modernizes things. So we'll see if this one will fire up here. With just a couple kicks. 3 primes and hopefully 1 to go. So, a lot of you guys, if you're not familiar with Harley Davidson during this time, one of the things that Harley was on at this point, coming from the Knucklehead, they've got the overhead valve, they're making their performance machine. They just continue to refine performance, engine reliability, cost of production, and then serviceability. So one of the reasons they went to the Panhead was you got aluminum heads. You run from that cast iron Knucklehead setup, which is really great engine. Keep running. Great engine, one of the best engines they ever made, but cast iron holds a lot of heat. The aluminum dissipates the heat a lot better. Oh, there, come on now. So, aluminum heads dissipates the heat better. You got a much better port. And then on top of that, the Panheads themselves, those rocker covers, actually house a much simpler rocker arm setup than the Knucklehead. So easier to build, easier to produce, easier to service. So great motorcycles. I'm telling you, your Panhead guys, you couldn't give them guys the Knucklehead. Now, for those of you guys buying tickets for our Knucklehead, you guys know where it's at. So, but we love them all. Like I said, 1950 Harley Davidson FL. This one is actually so this bike's all decked out with all sorts of crazy accessories. You got your genuine Harley Davidson saddlebags, kind of a deluxe solo example, crash guards, chrome exhaust stacks, front fender lights, spotlights, but then you've got all the extra stuff. You've got your cabbage cutter or cheese grater front bumpers, fender trim, big disc wheel up front, that beautiful windshield, handlebar reinforcement over here, windshield bag, which is a little bit later. You know, you've got, what do you got? An oil filter, cool accessory blue kicker pedal. You got your battery and oil tank lid there that covers up the battery. A little bit of extra fender trim. Like I said, the pretty Harley Davidson saddlebags. These we actually pulled off the shelf because the pair that came with this bike had been in the shed for a while, needed a little bit of reconditioning. Rear cabbage cutter, extra guide lights, sergeant stripes on the rear fender. Just pretty motorcycles. Was set off in that kind of Riviera blue.
Now, Big Cat in the chat wanted to know, he said, I thought you said friends don't let friends like rot walls.
Caught me. He caught me. You know what? The white wall thing is really just a joke, guys. So I'm glad you called me on it. We always give our buddies a hard time for running white walls. Our carpenter here at the museum, who's also on our board of directors, John Gustafson, that guy's got white walls on his shopping carts, you know? So we always give him a hard time. But you know what? This bike came, Mark, the fellow that owned this bike before me, had they're genuine Harley Davidson tires. He had the white walls on there, and they just had so much tread that I couldn't get rid of them. You know, I've got to put the miles on and burn through these tires before I kind of have the right to take them off. That being said, when I burn through the tread, white walls are gone.
Now, so. Charlie wants to know, what's the purpose of the cabbage cutters?
It's really just decorative, you know. It's a bumper, you know, not that you Not that you want to be using your bumpers, but yeah, it's really just decorative. So they made them in all sorts of forms. You've got, kind of the rail bumper here, which these actually help you put the bike on the rear stand a little bit also. That one would do the same on the back, but they just really just flare, you got to have 13 pieces of flare. So it's an Office Space reference for those of you guys that aren't into the 90s movies like Chris and I are. But no, really, it's just decorative stuff, It's kind of like, why add the stuff on the mud flap or, the fancy little extra lights or mirrors. And sometimes things, the accessories are functional. Sometimes it's purely aesthetic. In the 1940s, 50s is where you kind of see that line become blurred, and you see much more of just the purely aesthetic things on bikes as opposed to purely functional. Now, tons of cool accessories as you roam the museum. It's one of my favorite things to do when I'm looking like at an antique bike swap meet is roam around. I'm looking at the machines on the field, and I like to kind of key in on the accessories, on the stuff you don't see every day. You see panheads, you see shovel heads, you see knuckleheads at these events, but when you start to key in on the bikes, there's just really cool stuff out there. And we always say the accessories are rarer than the motorcycles because not everybody got them and not everybody kept them. So there's stuff like this cool fork lock over here, which the fork lock, this is called a PA lock, and it clamps to your front fork. And now I've got the rod off right now, but there's a rod here that clips into the clamp here and is housed by the other side of the lock, and you just slide that rod through your spokes when you park. It keeps anybody from rolling off your motorcycle. So cool rubber mounted risers and stuff like that. What else do we got? Funky luggage racks, extra light bars, and
Don't forget your seat medallion there. I think that's always one of the coolest things.
this one here, yeah, that's actually a genuine Harley Davidson part there. That came on all the seats of this type. So this is a rhino grain Harley Davidson solo seat. Now this seat has been recovered. We use the original medallion there for it. And then, so on this spotlight bar, this is what my kids hold on to when I put them on the front of the seat. Exhaust covers, and the list goes on and on, guys. It's some of our favorite stuff to pick out. So what do we got next? Here, come on over here, guys. One of the exhibits I haven't showed you in a while, that as you roam through the museum, it's one of the things that we love about this place so much. It's not just a line of motorcycles. You go in so many places, and to each their own. There's a million. It's the best part about all the different motorcycle museums out there, and I've seen some new ones that have opened recently. One of the neat things about it is everybody has their own way to display, everybody has their own way to interpret. One of the things about Wheels Through Time is we always wanted this place to feel kind of like this mix between the place that they were used, Grandpa's old garage, the salvage station, the service shop, the old gas station, the old bike shop. So this exhibit right over here, guys, we call this the Swim Shop. And George Swim was a Harley Davidson dealer in Energy, Illinois. And Energy was about maybe 40 miles from Mount Vernon, Illinois, where my dad's Harley Davidson dealership was. Now, this is George's dealership on Route 148 in Energy. Let's see if I can get this out here. So George and Wanda Swim were Harley Davidson dealers from maybe the 1940s in through the probably mid-1970s, excuse me. This is a photo of George's dealership. That's George way in the back. I would imagine you're looking at 1959 in this photo. You've got two brand new looking 1959 159 Sportster and 159 Duo Glide there. Kind of the same Hummer, same era Hummer. So yeah, genuine Harley Davidson history right here. I mean, this is how the old shops used to look. So my dad and George became good friends, and over the years George asked my dad to come check out the dealership long after it had closed. And the two got together, and my dad was able to purchase not just everything in George's old Harley Davidson dealership, but everything in George's warehouses also. So dozens of motorcycles, all the parts, all of the showcases and the tables and the workbenches. So what you see in here is our best recreation of George's Harley Davidson dealership in Energy, Illinois. So down to the shelving, the original like engine cases, carburetors. He had tons of new old stock parts, just right down to every little nut and bolt in here. Almost everything anyway is from George's place. So 1948 Panhead here my dad actually got from George in 1982 and then restored the bike. This bike's been one of the staples here at the museum. So I'm not sure who asked about the cabbage cutters, guys, but here's a pile of them in numerous different configurations. So there's your front one, real similar. Here's a front one with the funky balls on the top. Rear one here with some, let's see, it's got the fender mounts and everything. Looks like these two are a pair. And then these here without the bars going across. So made them with all sorts of different types, guys. So yeah, we occasionally come in here and look for parts, look for pieces for projects that we're using. Nothing's really off limits when it comes to that sort of stuff. It takes an immense amount to restore some of these old motorcycles. Some of the parts are nearly impossible to find. This has been a 50-plus year collection. Now, the thing is, I don't generally like to make this our first option. And the reason behind that is simple. The parts, there's only so many. They're harder to find every day. So if I can find one today, say I'm looking for a rear big port knucklehead. If I can find one today out there in the wild, I'd much rather do that than use one that's here, because one, it's already here. If I can find it now, I know it's easier to find now than it will be down the road, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So while I say nothing is off limits here, we take a great amount of pride and put in a great amount of effort in still chasing down the part and being able to find the part that we need. So always on the hunt, which brings me to my next point, or next topic. If you guys know about a barn full of old motorcycles somewhere, give us a call. We're always looking for things to add to the collection here at the museum. Always looking for parts for restorations. So if you guys have an old bike you're interested in selling, or have an old windshield for a Panhead for a guy like Sean, give us a call.
Yeah.
So,
and guys, if you aren't already, we do this content like this all the time. Just about every 2 weeks we put out a video getting one of these old bikes back up and running. You guys might remember we did this KH. This is the one that almost burnt my beard off. If you saw that video. So be sure to like this video. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you get notified when these things come out. And every bit of you doing that also helps to support the museum. So share this video. Make sure you subscribe, and you won't miss any of our new content we've got coming up. We've got a couple of really spectacular bikes that if you watched the last video, you got a sneak peek at. So I encourage you to go back, watch our live from earlier in this week, and you'll get a sneak peek at one of the videos that's coming up.
I'm looking forward to that one.
That's going to be a
good
fun
one. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to subscribe and wait to see it, guys. This was fun.
Yeah.
This was fun. Don't normally do K models, and this is such an awesome bike. It's a 1954 model KH. The K models came out in 52, and it was Harley's. They basically took the small twin, the 45 cubic inch job, designed a new engine with unit construction, engine and transmission, Harley's first swing arm production model. So the first Harley road bike with rear suspension. And then in 1954, they debuted the model KH, which the H signified a bump in cubic inches, a little bit hotter cams, better port work. Significantly punchier motorcycle, the KH was from the Model K. So come on this way. This one's finished off in, oh gosh, now I just forgot the name of the blue.
Oh yeah, I can't think of it either now.
One of you guys will know it in the comments there. So blue and white two-tone paint job from 1954. Maybe atomic. It's not atomic, but I should know this. So come on with us, guys. So to the board track racers, guys, a lot of the rarest bikes in the museum are right here in this exhibit. History dating all the way back to 1909 as far as board track racing. Board track racing started, we're talking the beginning of speed. Wooden tracks, made of 2x4s, stacked up the tall way, or 2x2s. Tracks as small as maybe an 1/8 mile, as big as 2.5 miles. So the bikes back here in the museum, or in the back of the museum, excuse me, some of the most specialized equipment of motorcycling's 120 plus year history back here. You've got Thor, Excelsior, of course Harley Davidson. You've got Indian. There's kind of privateer models. There's one up there called the Westfield Special. That's a combo Harley and Indian. Up top, you've got a Super X up that way. And then as you get up towards the front, we actually have a 1909 Reading Standard. That's the only known example of its type. Some of you guys have seen us run that bike in some of our programs before. So, 120 plus mile an hour motorcycles, guys, you got to imagine.
So here, this is a good spot to ask this question because a couple people have asked, the rarest bike in the museum. So if you Google world's rarest motorcycle, we have the 1916 Trob, which comes up, and it is an exceptional bike, one-off machine built in 1916 by a guy in Chicago. But standing in this exhibit here, there's some exceptionally rare machines here.
Yeah, and by the numbers, rarity is numbers, particularly. So if there's only been one of them ever produced, it's hard to get any rarer than that. So there are countless one-of-a-kind motorcycles in here. Just where we're standing right now, I'll point out some of the really key, significant historical pieces. Of course, starting with the rarest ones, the ones they only made one of. This is a 1921 model SCA factory board track racer. That's the first and only known example of its type. This is a completely original condition. It's a 500cc factory race bike. Guys like us, we couldn't even get motorcycles like this. So when the board track racing aficionados out there and the Harley Davidson racing gurus really key in on this exhibit here, this bike among a few others is one that really rises to the top. Behind us also, the 1913 Thor. That's a model SR factory Thor racing motorcycle. It's the only Thor twin-cylinder racing bike known to exist today in original running condition. So really special stuff. Thor was made in Aurora, Illinois. Thor actually produced the very first motorcycle engines for the Indian Motorcycle Company. So Thor had been around since the beginning, didn't start producing their own motorcycles until 1908, but produced engines for a number of companies. You've got Indian, Reading Standard, Apache, dozens likely of smaller makes also. So as you run this way, guys, the Banjo, probably the pinnacle of Harley Davidson racing collectability right here. They made 14 Banjo racing engines. This one here particularly is number 4. There's just a handful of these known today, and it is, if I had, well, I don't know. It's like I could say that every 10 feet, but if you had to pick one in this exhibit, maybe it's that one, maybe it's this one, maybe it's this one, maybe it's that one. So that's, again, guys, that's one of the things that sets this place apart from most places, is that around every turn, every few feet, is a motorcycle with such significance. It's it's hard to comprehend that so much of this could be here in one place. Now, the collection itself, this is a 50-plus year collection. My dad poured his life into chasing down American motorcycle history, spent all of his days looking for, like we said at the beginning, bikes with character, bikes with personality, bikes with great stories. Was obviously and understandably drawn to the racing machines from the earliest eras. It's one of the most romantic eras of motorcycling, period. I mean, this is a time when we're talking gladiator type sport, no safety precautions, speed and power that was increasing at a pace that you
Well,
couldn't.
I always tell people it's like the difference between the racing now and then is today safety is number one, right? Speed is secondary. In this era, speed was number one and safety was far down the bottom of the list.
Oh yeah,
Like, it was-
safety.
yeah,
Wait,
I mean, it was
we
just
gotta
all
think about that.
the fastest bike that you could get out there. Because these guys were pioneers, right? They were doing something that had never been done before, you know, in a way that, you know, 10 years prior to it, people would have never dreamed could even have been done.
That was a real thing, maybe the turn of the century, where they thought if you went 60 miles an hour, a mile a minute, your skin would peel off.
Yeah, I remember
Like
reading
it
that.
was a real thing.
Yeah.
And
'Cause
by
they couldn't conceptualize going that
they
fast.
couldn't
as a human being, yeah.
conceptualize it. And now, you know, within 12 years, they're averaging 100 miles an hour in races. It's remarkable. First 100-mile-an-hour motorcycle in a race was the Excelsior, a guy named Lee Humiston on a 1912 Excelsior. So right here, guys, 1916, that's called a big valve Excelsior. The thing had big 2¼ inch intake valves. Absolutely monster intake valves. This is one of the most exciting bikes to run here at the museum. It's been pickled for a bit. Maybe during our next live broadcast, we'll do some pre-prep, get this thing down.
This was my
fire it
first
up.
visit to the museum back in 2011 or 12. This is the first bike that I heard to fire up here.
Okay.
And this is part of what made me fall in love
And
with
he
this.
never left, guys. And he never left.
Never left. yes. So somebody asked a question here. Okay, the year's around circa 1930. You get to go race on a board track. What bike are you taking?
See, and you're reading my mind here. So from 100-mile-an-hour big valve Excelsior to the Harley Davidson DAR over here, this bike, only example ever produced. Now, to your question, by 1930, board tracks were kind of phased out. Okay, so you've got tracks of huge size, untreated wood. You get into the economic crunch of the Great Depression, and maintenance of these monster structures became nearly impossible. Always heard the story. There was a board track near Charlotte, North Carolina, and they took the track down as it started to fall in disrepair, and they literally built the town of Pineville out of the wood from that track. So the name Pineville comes from the surface that they were racing on at the track. At least that's the rumor.
And I can't remember if it's in Don Emdy's book or not, but he was talking about, you know, in the latter part of that era, as the tracks were deteriorating, that you had two crews of guys, and a lot of them were usually younger kids.
Yeah.
One crew under the substructure of the racetrack making repairs while the race was happening, and then another crew on top that is if the guys went by on their bikes and a board popped up, they would try to scramble up the track, put the board back in place before the guys came back around again.
Yeah,
So
right.
just
You
to
got
show you the condition. of
little
how
Billy's
things
like 6. He's got a hammer and a bag of nails, and he's got saying, "Go, go, go!" So back to the question. Since say 1930 or something, and we want the fastest board track, the baddest board track bike of the type. My opinion, it would be this one. This bike is decorated then and now. It's the only known example of its type. Now, this engine might look a little bit familiar to you. Jeff, on our broadcast about 45 minutes ago, maybe 30, 45 minutes ago, Jeff asked to hear the Harley Davidson DAH run. That was an overhead valve, 750cc, high compression, alcohol burning hill climber. Now, this is basically that very same engine wrapped in a board track racing chassis. So Only known example, it was never even documented to have been produced. It's called a model DAR. I say it was never documented to be produced. They actually have documentation of a model listing called a DAR. There's a photo or a few photos of a European road racer that was built for a German fella. Now that was a 3-speed transmission, front brake, rear brake, same type of engine, model DAR. This DAR, I believe, predates that. Original condition in that beautiful orange with black pinstriping. Every piece on the motorcycle is a factory racing component for this bike and this bike only, all wrapped around that ultra special 750 overhead valve engine. Now the neat thing about this engine, okay, hill climbers, bare bones engines, stripped to the max. The goal was to run 20 seconds up a hill. They didn't have to run long, so the construction of the engine, the construction of the engine, the duration at which they were run dictated the construction of your engine. That's what I'm trying to say here. So hill climbers, bare bones, completely exposed. All the moving parts on the outside of the engine were exposed. Valve springs exposed, push rods exposed. Base minimum oil pump. A lot of the hill climbers didn't run an oil pump at all. You'd put a little bit of oil in the sump down in the crankcase, warm that thing up, fire up to the top of the hill, you shut it down, you come back down, you can start all over. So this bike here, this engine shows that it was built with what I like to refer to as duration of use. Okay, so first thing, starting with that oil pump. This actually has a throttle controlled oil pump. So as you get on the throttle, it actually actuates a cam inside the oil pump that allows it to pump more oil. So it's pumping oil at engine RPM anyway, but as you get on it, it actually allows the pistons in that oil pump to travel a little bit more and to draw a little more and push a little more as that engine spins. So throttle controlled oil pump. It also has valve spring enclosures here, kind of a la 36 Knucklehead, but this thing was built before the 36 Knuckle. Here, I'll get you a flashlight out there, Steve. So yeah, these right in here are valve spring enclosures. There's actually springs. The rocker arms are allowed to contact the top of the valve there through a small slot in the valve spring cap there. So these were standard equipment on the 36 and 37 Harley Davidson Model ELs. Wasn't really even documented they were around before then, and here we have them. Now what's really cool about these is, now keep in mind guys, there's no top end oiling on these motorcycles. So what they did here was they plugged the crankcase vent, which would have been right here on the side of the cam cover, and they tapped into the cam chest and they ran overhead lines to all 4 valve spring cups. So these actually miss the valves from crankcase pressure with a little bit of oil. So very neat setup. Now there's grease fittings over on the other sides of the rocker arms. So you would grease the rocker arms and then little bits of oil would make it up to the top to the valve springs to lube the guides, the valve, the spring itself. So very, very neat setup. And then these big long pipes, duration of use, run it wide open. We're talking 125, potentially 130 mile an hour motorcycle. There's one mention in the Harley Davidson data book, which is a really cool publication from, say, the mid-1990s. One mention in the Harley Davidson data book from, I think, 1930, might have been 1929, of a 45 cubic inch bike averaging 111 miles per hour in a race. So 111 miles per hour, a flathead Harley 45 won't even do it. It won't even do it.
No.
You know, where to average that in a race is remarkable. The only 45 that could have done it would be the model DAH. So no brakes, no clutch, direct drive. When the motor's running, the wheel is spinning. And
so
really
somebody,
special
and this
stuff.
is a good bite to kind of talk about the differences here. So some of these board track racers have pedals, some of them don't. So what's the starting procedure between the two of those?
Sure. So you see those pedals really early on. because you're coming from your bicycle roots here. So really early on, the machines have pedals. The pedals were used to start the bike. They were also used as a brake here. Cause this one's kind of set up. This is still not a complete setup. Come on over this way. I'll show you guys the SCA. Now, also at the same time was probably what the bike was going to be used for. Now, this machine here has the pedals, which pedals started, but the problem with the pedals is that they actually move. And really early on, they actually stopped running pedals and would go to footrests, or else you'd had to anchor your pedal, because as you're hanging left, if you bring that pedal down, you're going to hit the ground, and it's going to lift your rear wheel up off the ground. So most of the bikes have fixed footrest, because very early on you realize you're not pedaling the bike to a start when the rear wheel's on the ground. The pedal start itself is really only functional for starting the bike on a rear stand or a brake. So this one over here, guys, this is probably the best one to look at, 1914. Now, this is Harley Davidson's first factory racing motorcycle. They made 8 of these in 1914. This is the only known complete example. So this bike here has the pedals, and it has a rear brake setup, which normally worked a little bit earlier than this, and on all other pedals to a coaster brake. Now this actually has a rear drum brake. So as you back pedal, you're actuating that rear brake. This bike was fit up with a clutch and that rear brake. Dodge City 300-mile race, 300 miles. You're gonna have to stop probably twice, potentially 3 times. Pull that clutch in, come in, under no power necessarily, and then rear coaster brake, or not, I keep calling it a coaster brake, but back pedal brake to be able to stop and get fuel and then ease off again. So pedals for brakes, pedals for starting. The reality is, though, in all of these races, you've got rolling starts. It's kind of like NASCAR, but instead of pole position, they fan out wide on the track. So as you get your warm-up laps, you're kind of jockeying for position. Shorter tracks, the faster riders were probably way up on the outside. On the longer tracks, there's probably there's no telling where they would have preferred to start. Might have been rider preference. But these bikes here, you get push started and everybody gathers, and you have a few of those warm-up laps for everybody to get together, and as you come around that turn 4, they drop that green flag and off you go. When you're racing one of these bikes, and like my old race bike over here, your feet are only in one spot. You only need them in one spot. So the pedals themselves kind of became a little bit obsolete. And this is a half-mile bike, specifically built short chassis here, 61 cubic inch. This is what I would call a hot stock engine. So I built this bike actually to race. Didn't want to put a real factory racing engine at risk, so souped up a stock engine, raced this bike quite a bit, and like kind of your right side pedals to the back here, your left side pedals to the front. On a dirt track, you're counter steering most of the time, so you're facing this direction. So if you notice your pedals, it's not like a GP bike or a super bike or something, or even a road bike where both your pegs or footrests are in the same spot. They're actually staggered a little bit, and it's quite comfortable. You wouldn't think that it is.
Yeah. Now, Steve, come down here. Somebody was asking about the tank cutouts, and
Yep.
you can see they did that for the rocker arm clearance at the top. So when this engine's running, these rocker arms are moving up and down to open the intake valve. So they just do this to keep that tank up out of the way of the machine.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to see, if you want to get a real live modern day example of what it would have been like in very similar fashion to watch these guys race, Matt's had this bike at Sons of Speed. They do that event twice a year in March and October, right?
March and October.
Yeah, New Smyrna Speedway, just outside of Daytona. There's guys with all classes from the teens all the way through the 40s racing these vintage machines out there on that banked oval. And it's a great time to kind of see and get a feel of what it would have been like in those early days of racing.
That's right, man. Everybody knows who Billy Lane is. Billy got the bug for early American racing, visited the museum lots, went to these antique bike meets where they were racing, and got the bug for that early period of go fast, and started up a circuit, the Sons of Speed circuit. We've been going down there over a number of years, and I think Billy's probably right now in his 8th year of Sons of Speed, maybe. And the guys are going fast. New Smyrna Speedway, it's a half-mile banked paved oval. Closest thing we have to board track racing. So check this out up top, Steve. The big mural on the wall there. When we say board track racing, those are 2x4s stacked up the tall way. Okay, you see the surface that they're riding on, and they said up to 800 miles of 2x4s in a 2-mile track, which is just staggering to think about as far as maintenance goes, especially.
And most of them were banked at like 60 degrees.
They were huge bank. The shorter the track, the bigger the banking, because the speeds were fast. But you got your big tracks, Altoona and the like, some of these tracks as big as they were, it's very much like a Daytona or a Talladega.
I always tell
Speedway.
people that all the time. It's like, if you ever go to Daytona, Talladega, do the Speedway Tour, right, and you think about that size of a track, all being constructed entirely out of wood.
It's remarkable.
Yeah,
And you couldn't walk up.
Yeah.
You couldn't walk up the banking. So one of the engines, now this is not a particularly a board track racing engine, but it's of the type. This is my 1916 Harley Davidson Cutdown. Now we fired up the chopper up front, the Indian chopper, kind of that late period of motorcycle customization in America. They started customizing bikes way, way back, guys. So this is what we call a cut down. And the idea behind this was take your stock bike with real tall center of gravity, long wheelbase, tiller style handlebars, cut it down into something more agile, more maneuverable, lower, lighter, faster. So this machine is modified over a number of years and turned into a bike that you don't sit on, you sit in it. And
hands down, this is one of the funnest bikes we have here to get out in the parking lot.
It's a
and ride
donut
around
machine. It's just the thing is, like, when you ride it, you feel tough, So, and as far as the tank cutouts, come on over here, guys. We'll show you why. Somebody, the fellow that asked the question about the tank cutouts. Now, on your racing machine, that engine's dropped a little bit lower, so some of the racers don't have the cutouts. Your road model machines, because they kept the engine a little higher in the chassis with that loop frame, and drop the tank right down on top of it. All this clearance is for your intake valve. Now, we always say this is when they work as much on the outside as they do on the inside. Let's see here. Ought to be 2 kicks. Whoop. Could have been 1 kick. And all these intakes, this is your intake valve system. Your exhaust valves are underneath the covers here. It's a side valve. It's what we call a pocket valve. So the intake opens down and your exhaust opens up. That rocker arm is what reverses the motion there. So push rod on the intakes, and all of this stuff continually moves. You'd oil it manually. There's no top end oiling here, so you'd have an oil squirt can or a grease gun, and you'd grease or oil all this top end stuff there. Oh, come on now. Have it, guys. So this bike, ton of fun to ride. I've ice raced that motorcycle in minus 13 degrees. Couldn't feel my feet. Dirt track raced it, jumped it. Just had so much fun on that motorcycle. That started as an engine that I found at an antique motorcycle meet in Wauseon, Ohio. And found a cool frame that was modified, found the right fork for it, all the right pieces to be able to faithfully recreate out of original components a period custom like they would have done it back then. So fun stuff, guys. So hey, for those of you guys that didn't catch the beginning of the broadcast here, we're doing a walkthrough of the museum, Wheels Through Time, right here in Maggie Valley. We are giving our motorcycle away, raffling off the 1936 Harley Davidson Knucklehead next Saturday, 1 week from today. It's our big fundraiser. There's all sorts of ticket packages below. Get a chance at winning a piece of motorcycle history, valuable motorcycle history. 36 Knuckleheads, like the pinnacle of American motorcycle collectability. Like I said, it's our big fundraiser. We're doing a walkthrough, Chris and I, right now, of the museum to show you guys what this place is all about and what the raffle supports here. So the raffle itself, it's our 22nd year. 23rd bike we're giving away. 1 year we gave away 2 motorcycles. And this year's our 22nd annual raffle. The 36 Gold and Black Knucklehead is going off in less than a week.
Yeah, less than a week.
We've got the thing dialed in. Next Tuesday, or this coming Tuesday, we're going to be going live again, doing that last service on the bike. So if you can, mark that on your calendars and hang with us. We're going to do an oil change, some retorque, you know, adjust the chains. You guys hang with us. It'll be in the shop the whole time. So excited to share that with you guys and kind of bring that bike full circle and have it basically ready for you to ride home on. So really excited about it. So we're doing the walkthrough today, firing up some of our rare bikes, some of our rarest bikes, and some of our favorite bikes here at the museum. Some of the new things, some of the stuff you've seen on the channel. So appreciate you guys jumping in with us. We've been answering questions.
Yeah, so if you have anything, drop it in the chat.
Drop it in the chat, chime in. If you see something cool in the background you're wondering about, let us know, guys. We'll tell you all about it. The more you look here, the more you see, and there's no joke. So you can visit this place 10 times, 15 times, and still never see it all. So
somebody wants to see some Jack Pine bikes. So
Yes.
Since we're right here, why don't we stop and...
I love it. So the Jack Pine, guys, for those of y'all that aren't familiar, it's one of my favorite eras of well, our exhibit kind of spans, say, the maybe 1930s through the 60s. Yeah. But the Jack Pine Endurance Race, 500-mile race through Michigan, enduro race, basically no roads. So time distance rally. It was a 2-day race. And the Jack Pine, I mean, it separated the men from the boys. You got to imagine. You've got 500, 450-pound motorcycles muscling these things through the woods. A lot of these motorcycles here are completely as raced original machines. You've got the WL over here. This one's one of my favorite. We need to do a show on this one, guys. So whoever chimed in on the Jack Pine stuff, stay tuned, because this one here we're going to end up doing a video on. This bike hasn't run in probably 20 years. This was George Swim's. If you guys were hanging with us about 30 minutes ago or a few minutes ago, we highlighted the swim shop over there on the right side of the museum, the recreation of the old bike shop. This was one of George's Jack Pine machines, so 45 cubic inch Harley Davidson WLD, which was the high performance machine. This thing would have left the factory with a Springer fork. They put the Glide front end on there, the big high clearance fenders. Look up those handlebars. It's got the Bark Buster hand guards. Made out of a piece of, what's that, 3/8 round stock, just clamped to the handlebars. I mean, these guys were tough. You got, you know, hundreds and hundreds of pounds, not a lot of power, not a lot of suspension. You got a couple TT machines here, Knucklehead or Panhead over on this side. This is the Hot Rod Knucklehead. This one here, it's so high compression, this bike, and some of you guys have seen us do burnouts through the museum on this thing. I tried starting this for a buddy of mine the other day, and I bet I kicked it 100 times. And we always say here, is if the thing doesn't start, this is for me, thanks. Yeah. If the bike doesn't start in 3 or 4 kicks, something is generally wrong. This thing here, it might start in 1 kick, it might start in 30 kicks. Yeah. Nothing's wrong, it's just hard to start because it's 12-to-1 compression.
It's the most stubborn bike in the museum.
It's the most stubborn bike in the museum, but Look at that rear tire, man. It'll roast the rubber. There's no doubt about that. So, yeah, some more JDH Jack Pines. This was George's first Jack Pine bike, the VLH. What's really cool about this bike, George stripped it down, lightened it up where he could, but it's still pretty much a stock Harley Davidson VLH, and to the point where he even has the original fenders that he pulled off the bike still right here. So original Sherwood green and silver setup. Two of my favorite Jack Pine bikes at the museum here are the Sidecar rigs, and when somebody asks, hey guys, how are y'all? Good, how are you? Good, you enjoying so far? Yes, sir. All right, appreciate you coming. The two Jack Pine sidecars here, Clarence Fisher Harley Davidson in Elgin, Illinois, raced this one into the 1960s, raced it in all sorts of enduros. This thing still has the Jack Pine Cowbell Classic engine seal on the head bolt there, but this one here, 1949 Panhead, jacked up all high off the ground, extra ground clearance. This would have been in the sidecar class, along with the Indian 4-cylinder here. This is a Class B sidecar winner from 1950. This was raced by a guy named Clem Murdaugh from Westchester, Pennsylvania. At the time, Indian was actually owned by the DuPont paint family, and the passenger was one of the DuPont somebody in the family from the DuPont family. So the cool thing about this one, it has a driven sidecar wheel, which you can engage and disengage using a few transmission components out of an Indian, and then it has this winch that runs full time on a PTO coming out of the transmission. So very, very cool. Customized engine where they combine 3 different engines to make one. It's like I said, the driven sidecar wheel. There's an extra fuel tank way up here in the nose of the sidecar with a fuel pump. Bush axe just in case you run into down trees or bears or unruly Harley riders. So anyway, the Jack Pine stuff, guys, amazing period in history. And just to visualize, this is the stuff they were going through. You know, creek crossings, sand, log bridges. Look at this guy, you know, unbelievable. And got a lot of your Class A and Class B results here. The Robinson family, epic Jack Pine family. Dot Robinson raced, Earl Robinson raced and won numerous times. So real colorful period. The Jack Pine, it started I think in 1923. It was an 800-mile race. They pinched it down to 510 miles, and they ran at 510 miles for a number of years, and then at some point it became a 250-mile one-day race, and they still race it today. They're racing big modern dirt bikes with all sorts of crazy suspension. And
So, most powerful engine in the collection, what would you say?
well, it's got to be this.
Yeah.
So we're right here. Timely question. So the hill climb stuff, guys, and hill climb's still big sport today. This machine was built by a fella named Tom Reiser. Tom Reiser, if you guys know racing, Tom Reiser is a legendary name. He's the only guy to win national drag race and national hill climb championships. So Tom Reiser raced the Super Sportster himself, drag bike, did a V8 drag bike, got big into hill climbing, and built some of the most potent hill climb machines, period. So this is a 750cc, 200 horsepower nitro burner. Okay, so 200 horsepower, guys, if you can imagine, not a 750cc pushrod engine. Okay, this isn't like this isn't an overhead cam. It's not, this is an American hunk of metal here, breathed into by the wizard of all wizards, Tom Reiser. So, you know, it's almost 5 horsepower per cubic inch. So, like 14 inches of front suspension. You got probably a foot of suspension in the back with that big, long, crazy swing arm there, and nitromethane. So I think they said they ran this on 90% nitro. I'm not 100%, but I think it was some astronomical amount. And I've only heard the bike run once And if you guys know nitro, it'll bring tears to your eyes. There's no doubt about it. It is as potent gets. And, you know, to think jumping on one of these old, you know, no disrespect intended, one of these clunky old Harleys that make 50 horsepower, which was a lot back then, with 1 inch of suspension and none in the back. You got to be brave. You got to be tough. Not an easy sport. But this is something else. If you can imagine climbing on that thing and pointing it up a hill that's 500 feet long with 3 jumps in it. Incredible. And if you've heard of, you know, you hear a nitro engine run, the closest thing that I can think of, what's a nitro engine sound like? What's a nitro engine sound like? The closest thing I can compare it to is like the roar of a lion. You know, it's like this instantaneous power that you feel it here. You know, it's like you feel it here faster than it registers with your ears. You know, it's just remarkable. So, probably the most powerful bike. Now we've got it's one of the super bikes upstairs, the Harley Davidson VR 1000. Maybe, I don't know if it was 200 horsepower. As far as old bikes go, probably that TT Knucklehead we pointed to over there, the black and white one. The Big Fish here is potent. You guys want to hear the fish run again? Last live we cranked the Big Fish up.
Somebody already asked about that. Just
asked for the fish? All right. So one of our favorites, the Big Fish here. Now, we call it the Big Fish for 2 reasons. It's a 1941 Knucklehead. First reason is the big fish on the front fender. Nothing... He's pretty expectable, you know. It's one of those names that what else are we going to call it? So on top of that, you know, like a fish flips its tail like this, you get on the gas on this thing and the rear end wants to pass you. So the 1941 Knucklehead with a really cool swing arm in the back. So knuckles, panheads all the way up through 1957, flatheads would be rigid frame, and somebody at some point in this bike's early life decided to cut the rear frame apart and build in a swing arm there. So double shock, double tube swing arm. It works incredibly well, does exactly what it's supposed to do. Now this bike is fast. Fast is relative. Will it get out there and run with a Busa or a ZX or a you know, new KTM, Super Duke, whatever they are? No, it won't. But for a bike of this period, there wouldn't have been much that's faster on the road than this motorcycle. So now, fun story about this bike. My dad and I, when I was in my 20s, my dad, much long before that, would go out to the Antique Motorcycle Road Run in Death Valley, California. And the Southern California chapter of the Antique Motorcycle Club would put on the road run out there in Death Valley. Started by a guy named Max Bubeck, who was a legendary Indian racer, bike collector. And so the Death Valley run, you know, you think Death Valley, you think, what would be a terrible place to ride. Well, it's actually a beautiful place to go. We would go in October, so you're not in the 120, 130 degrees. You go in October. It's 100 degrees in the valley, but the thing about the area is most of your riding is 6,000, 7,000 feet up. So you leave with a leather jacket in the morning, and you just get to traverse some of the most incredible landscape in the country. And you're going from desert valleys to mountains, back to valleys to mountains. It's just fantastic. And one of the big events that we'd always do there at the Death Valley Road Run, we do a coasting race where we climb up to the top of Dante's View, which overlooks Badwater. Badwater's the lowest point in the United States, 280 feet below sea level. We'd run up to Dante's View, and we would have a coasting race down past Furnace Creek, which is the National Park Lodge. I think it was 30-something miles. 30-something miles, no engines. You literally roll off, and off you go. Starts on a steep hill. Now, the thing is, it's not who gets to the bottom first. It's who coasts the furthest. So every year, it literally ends with guys going 2 miles an hour trying to keep their bike up. So Our pal Joey on his 56 Panhead would win the coasting race over and over and over again. So 34 miles, and all you hear is tires and people laughing and guys grabbing each other's crash cards. Not safety approved. So the other really fun event that we would do, where this bike ties in, is we would have a drag race, and just over the Nevada line from California, out of the national park, is a little dry lake bed. It's called Bonnie Claire Dry Lake, and we would jump out on the Bonnie Claire Dry Lake, have a truck with us. The truck would have 2 spare tires, and the truck would run out a quarter mile, drop the 2 tires for a finish line, and we would literally with our foot draw the starting line in the dry lake bed, and draw up brackets and do drag races. This bike never lost the Death Valley drag races. So if any of you guys on the live stream were there, you probably remember the big fish. I remember them Indian guys hated this bike. They'd build up big 100 cubic inch Indian Chiefs to try and smoke this thing, and big goose egg for the Indian guys running up against the big fish. So the thing absolutely snorts. It's some sort of crazy stroker engine. We don't even know what's inside of it. That's the cool thing. We never even had the engine apart. Had the exhaust pipes out once, and you know, exhaust ports are real nice and smooth inside, but further than that, have absolutely no idea. It's got an aftermarket hot rod carburetor on it, or not aftermarket, but a Linker hot rod accessory carb on it, which would be for a 41 to 47 Harley Knucklehead. Probably some big cam, probably a bunch of extra cubic inches in compression, and then a 3-speed transmission instead of a 4-speed, which probably worked to our advantage. As much torque as this thing pulls, and then with the squat of that swing arm, you get on it, it's got the torque to pull that tall gearing, you got one less shift. The thing absolutely flies. Oh, come on, let me start over. I was talking too much. All right, there we go. Ready? Here we go. Whew. Come on. Start over. 1, 2. What'd I say? If you got to kick it more than 3 times, something's wrong. Breaking my own rule here. This thing will mark the flame out the pipe. Bang, boom, pop. There we go. See if it'll start back up any easier. Oh, come on. Might be out of gas. One more time. So, one thing we learned about this, it's a story I don't really tell most people, but our pal Big Mo always rode this bike out there, and Mo's 6'4", big guy. You know, it's still the fastest bike with Mo on it. But it doesn't like the turns. So we're riding out there through some of the twisties, and my dad and me and Joey and Mo are out there. And we come around this corner, pull in this parking lot, and there's no Mo. It's like, man, well, we'll wait for him here for a few minutes. So 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes go by. There's no Mo. So we turn back around and, you know, come around one of the corners there, and way off down the bank. Mo's down there with the fish. So took 4 of us to get it out, but it's a hill climber too, apparently. So anyway. really snappy and really snorty. Most definitely extra cubic inches in there. That's one of the things we always like to talk about is with strokers, with cubic inches. You know, Harley Davidson produces a machine of a given displacement. A lot of hot rod guys out there. How do you make it faster? How do you make it torquier? How do you make it punchier? One of the answers is to stroke it. So you hear about, it's bored 30 over and it's this and that. You know what? When you only got 2 cylinders, something like 30 over, 50, it doesn't make a huge difference. What makes a difference is stroke, and I'll tell you why. You have, given any engine, you have a connecting rod to stroke ratio. Okay, that ratio determines piston speed. Okay, piston speed is what draws air in and out of the engine, and that's how you make power, is to move air in and out of an engine. So with stroke, with the extra cubic inches coming with stroke, given the same rod length, you increase your piston speed significantly. So it's not just the cubic inches that gets you the extra power, it's actually the piston speed. So that's why strokers particularly are really snorty. You know, you take an engine, we can go crank that 61 inch, and we'll crank that one next up there, the 61 inch 47 knuckle. And you'll hear it, it's a great engine. Makes great torque for 61 cubic inch, 1000 cc's, very smooth and even power. You stroke one, and the thing is instantly whap, 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 without even really having to lighten up the flywheels. So really snorty engine, fast acceleration, amazing top speed, and yeah, fun motorcycle to ride. So that's one of the things about this place, guys, is these machines are made to be ridden. Bike like that, you know, to some degree or another, Harley Davidson built this stuff. Hey, buddy, what's happening? Yeah, are you? Good deal, man. I love it. I sure like your hat, too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you want me to tell you about that one right there?
That is very interesting.
Isn't that cool? That's a mining cart that was found in California at the Davis Gold Mine. Okay, and the Davis Gold Mine is actually still in business today. But what they did with that mining cart there, let me jump up there, guys, so you can, I'll move that deal out of the way so you guys can see it on the camera. What they did with this machine was they actually harvested the center part of a Harley Davidson motorcycle. And if you look, that billboard over there on the back of the building there, you see where it says 80 miles per gallon? Mm-hmm. That motorcycle with that guy on it, and there's an actual example of it just down below that fella that's, the bike's pointed up over there. It's a 1926 Harley B model flathead, 350cc. They took the fork off of it, cut the rear end off the bike, dropped it in this mining cart, welded it all together, kept the engine, kept the transmission, kept the gas tank. This here, these are actually the handlebars. So like right here, that's the handlebars. They turned up sideways, and then they put these little, welded on those little posts so you can operate it like this. Added a second transmission. It's 9 forward speeds, it's 3 reverses. And this was, yeah, it was found in an abandoned portion of the mine, and then turned up at a antique motorcycle swap meet, and that's where my dad found it. And we brought it back here, got the thing fired up and running, and believe it or not, it runs like a new 350cc flathead. They say that the guy that was riding it when the mine collapsed was still on it when they found it like 50 years later. So I don't know if that's true or not, but we like to tell the story. So very neat stuff though. Davis Motor Mine. Now the exhibit up here, guys, is like, we call this Homemade America. So it's ways to make life a little easier or a little more fun using motorcycle power plants, motorcycle engines, motorcycle chassis. Like this one, that's we call it the first jet ski, and that's got a Harley Davidson J model engine from the 20s that was water cooled, so they like water jacketed it. And then what you do here is this, you got a gas pedal, so this here sets over the motor, right? And it'd sit like this, and you got this. To me, this seems like if it got wet, it would be slicker than wood would be, but who knows? Anyway, you got a gas pedal, and then you hold on to the rope, and the rope actually steers the rudder. I don't know if you can see it down there below. So the rope steers the rudder. First personal watercraft with a Harley Davidson engine. So, and what they did was they water jacketed that motor, and basically, like the way I kind of would explain it, it's a pocket valve like the J model I cranked up for you a little bit ago over there, and they basically like took a coffee can, slid it over the engine, sealed it up on the bottom, piped water in, and it trickles through the fins and cools the fins, and then it's gravity fed out and then pumped out the back. So, and it's picked up in these little fins down there. I don't know if you can see down there, there's those little wings which pick up the water and draw it up to the top. So pretty neat stuff. Like I said though, ways to make life a little easier, a little more fun. Yeah, innovation. That's an ice sled. That's what those propeller.
Not the product of necessity, it's the product
That's right. You know, this like grandpa's old Harley engine sitting in the corner, and hey man, let's figure out something to do with it. Like these over here, this guy made an ice saw, and then those are like tillers there, so for guys that set them up for farming. And this one here is actually a factory produced thing. It's a Worthington grass cutter. So Worthington would buy Harley engines and make grass cutters with them. So they said for golf courses. Snow blower. It's a neat one. That one come out of Maine, just handmade, 1920 something J model engine, and used for clearing driveways. If you guys need anything while you're hanging, let me know, all right? Yeah, sure thing. If you got questions, don't be shy. If you hear something run, come check it out. All right, so one of you guys earlier asked about the rarest motorcycles here in the museum, and the exhibit we're climbing into right now houses a lot of those machines. Like Chris said, if you Google world's rarest motorcycle, the machine that comes up is the 1916 Trob motorcycle. See, the thing is, there never was a Trob motorcycle company, but here exists this highly refined, leaps and bounds ahead of its time motorcycle. 80 cubic inch, side valve, twin cam, 3-speed, keystone frame. All these things manufacturers weren't quite doing yet. And this fella here assumingly built this entirely of his own design in his own garage. Cast and machined his own engine cases, cast and machined his own cylinders, manifold, made his own frame, made his own hubs, made his own transmission. You know, and you guys hear me probably, for those of you guys that tune in a lot, you probably hear me say it all the time. We always say the term modern motorcycle was redefined countless times throughout history. The transmission was one of those elements that separated the successful companies from the ones that were going to go out of business. This guy built his own transmission. It's just remarkable to think about. So 4 parts on the bike you'd find anywhere else in the world. Seat, it's a Troxel jumbo seat, common of the era. Schebler carburetor, Bosch magneto, wheel rims. Other than that, it's almost entirely of its own design. And there's pieces on it that are kind of inspired by other parts. Like it has some Excelsior looking characteristics, which would make sense. Excelsior's built in Chicago. The guy probably saw more Excelsiors than any other brand. Similar design to an Excelsior fork, but at the same time, different from its basest construction. Luggage rack and toolboxes, same thing. Kind of similar, different. At the same time. Cool little toolbox up on top. The chain drive magneto is really cool. The swept floorboards. Just a marvel of engineering.
Yeah, and I always like, because we've talked before, people tend to look at these early bikes and think of them as very primitive, but you got a guy who's 20 years ahead of his time in the engine size that he puts out here. But even like the Merkel in 16, right? Monoshock rear suspension, which most people think is a more modern concept.
That's right.
Merkel tried it in 16.
Way back.
And it just wasn't, at that time, people just didn't catch on to it. But my favorite part is the auto starter.
The auto starter. It's like a Kickstarter on the engine.
Yeah. So you've got basically like I always compare it like a watch spring, right? That you wind up here, and then you put the lever here, it unwinds the spring and the motor fires.
That's right.
So in 1916, automatic self-starter, you can see it here. Here's a poster when they're advertising it. But all these guys, these companies, and even these individuals were so forward-thinking early on in trying to figure out not just let's enjoy what we've done, but how can we make the art and the enjoyment of riding a motorcycle that much better.
That's right. You know, and if you when you're the drive to be the first to do something, you know, that's you know, you just can put yourself back in these times. Like we look at so much of this through a lens of 100 years, 120 years, where, oh yeah, well, of course they did that. Of course they figured out they should have done that. Well, to be the first guy to think up a monoshock suspension, it's remarkable, you know, to be the first guy to come up with using ball bearings inside of the motor, or the first to design a hemispherical combustion chamber, things like that. It's you know, these people were shapers of what we know today, and that's the thing about motorcycle history, and it's the thing about history in general, and we see it here particularly every day because we're in the motorcycle world. We live old bikes. We see these elements of advancement every day, and it's just remarkable to look and envision, you know, these guys doing this for the very first time. This one over here was,
Yeah, I was going to say this is a great one to go to.
my dad always called this one the rarest bike here at the museum. This bike, we call it the Headstrom prototype, the Headstrom Special, and the bike's a 1913 Indian that was built, owned, and ridden by Oscar Headstrom. Oscar Headstrom was the co-founder of Indian. They always said he put the mode in motorcycle, and the bike has two of everything, but none of the parts fit a standard Indian. And it's like,
I always call it an exercise in redundancy.
it's an exercise in redundancy, which is like, you know, kind of, it's redundancy, but it's also like double effective in certain things that he doubled. But you know, it's you know, incredible special piece of equipment, totally original. Another one of my favorites, the 1908 Indian, that one there, two-seater, first full year for the twin-cylinder Indian. It's got the double gas tanks, the double seats, double handlebars. That thing's one of the few, this motorcycle, people always ask, does everything run? And we always say, yes, everything runs, minus maybe 4 motorcycles here at the museum, that being one of them. That bike likely will run. The engine spins over, it has great compression, ultra simple carburetor, battery ignition, so if you hooked a battery to it, I'm sure it would run. That bike still has the original white G&J tires on it. So I think they're G&J. Yeah, G&J original button tread tires on it. So those white tires, you find an old motorcycle with the original white tires on it, it's so rare. We take great care in preserving, even though that thing's crumbling and rotting off the wheel, we're doing everything we can to keep it just like it is. We could replace those tires in an afternoon with a pair of newly made reproduced tires for the same type of wheel. But you have to look at originality here, and it's one of the things at the museum that we focus on the most is keeping the machine, preserving the machine, and keeping it as original as we can. So there is that trade-off between runability and originality. So sometimes we kind of take the avenue to preserve. Bike back in the corner with the brass tank there, 1905 Yale, California. That bike's almost identical to the first motor vehicle to cross the United States. A guy named George Wyman did it in 1903 and actually beat a car. There was a Winton automobile and George Wyman on the Yale, or I was actually at the time they called it a California motorcycle 2 years earlier than that one. And Wyman set off, I believe they might have set off at the same time, and Wyman actually beat the Winton automobile on the coast-to-coast run. So I think he said it took him maybe something like 56 days or something like that. There's a great original account, or a great account of his first ride. You can actually get it online. It's called Wyman's Ride, and it's a journal of his trip across the United States on a motor vehicle, on a motorcycle in 1903, which is mind-blowing to think about. You know, jumping nowadays, you got gas stations around every corner. You got nice cushy hotel beds to sleep in. You got highways that are paved and beautiful, and you can ride most of the way no-handed if you want to. To set out on a coast-to-coast run going west to east, and just to think about crossing the desert in Southern California, not knowing where your next fuel stop's going to be, not knowing what sort of heat and what elements you're going to run into, pretty remarkable stuff. One of the most interesting things about that run that he recorded in the, which you can read about in the Wyman's Ride, is when he pulls into Omaha, Nebraska. And this ties into another motorcycle we have here. When he pulls into Omaha, Nebraska, he's walking his bike in, flat tire or something like that. He says he seeked out the largest bicycle shop in the country. And he says the guy by name, and that was owned by one Louis Flesher. So he goes on and talks about how Flesher got him fixed up and back on the road. Well, we have a bike here called the Flesher Flyer, built by one Louis Flesher in Omaha, Nebraska. So this bike's the only known Flesher Flyer in existence. Now here, this is the only advertisement or mention, and this is cut off here. This is a photocopy. It says August 1914, and it says the Flesher Flyer. Word from Omaha, plans are now underway to organize a company of building new motorcycles. Organized by Louis Flesher. So the way I kind of look at it, Wyman rides in 1903, and Flesher like sees this guy come in on this bicycle with a motor on it. You know, he's like, wait a minute. Inspires him to undertake his own effort to build motorcycles. Now, this bike, when my dad found it, it was very much like the Trob, completely unknown history of who built the bike. And over the years, this was actually featured in a magazine article in American Iron magazine, which our friend Buzz Canner published for a number of years. And Buzz wrote about the Flesher Flyer, and it's kind of a neat engineering marvel. It uses a Spacky Deluxe engine that was made in Minneapolis. Really cool features on the motorcycle, leaf spring front end. It's got floorboards, footboards that actually actuate and operate the clutch and the brake. So then the footboards actually say Flesher Flyer on them. So what's neat about this is that through that article, we got a letter in the mail. Hey, my grandfather was Louis Flesher. We've got some really cool history on Grandpa that we want to send you. And so they sent us all these original photographs of Louis and his creations. There's his bicycle shop way over in the corner. There's his first motorcycle that he ever produced, which incidentally is this amazing cross between a Yale, California, and say that 1903 Indian that's over on the other side of the building. So the way I look at it, Wyman rode that bike in, Louis took a look at it, said, oh my gosh, I can do that, built himself a motorcycle and started from there. So guys, the history here is incredible, and when you go back far enough and you look at how it all ties together, it's just inspiring stuff, guys. So
so you talked about starting up this other Knucklehead.
Yeah.
Somebody had asked, when you do that, can you go through the controls of how these bikes, you know, so foot
of course
clutch,
I can.
throttle,
Absolutely.
timing, all
let's
that kind of stuff.
do that, guys. Come on over this way. We'll actually pull the bike out and fire it up here. So bike at hand, 1947 Harley Davidson model EL, and the EL was 61 cubic inches. The FL, hey Jake, what's up? All right, so the EL was 61 cubic inch, the FL was 70. Controls on a motorcycle like this, very simple, really similar to what you guys have on all your new motorcycles. So starting with the commonalities, throttle right here, just like every bike, rear brake, right here on the foot, just like every other motorcycle. So the front brake is actually always on these old bikes, it's on the side you shift on. So that's a place where some guys kind of get confused, because your front brake on your new machine is here. Front brake on the old bikes, all the tank shift motorcycles, is on the side you shift on. So on the Indians, they actually had the brake over on this side, and you're shifting here and throttle's here. So throttle, rear brake, front brake here. Your left hand grip is spark advance. Okay, now the spark advance changes your ignition timing. If you look over on this side of the engine, Steve, you can see your distributor here. The spark advance, that's retard, and this is advance. So the purpose for spark advance is there's an optimal time for spark to fire based on engine RPM, load, etc. So when you're starting an engine, the engine is literally starting from a standstill. As the pistons come up on the compression stroke, the spark actually fires before the pistons get to the top. Now, when you have, say, 25 pounds of flywheel inertia spinning at 3,000 RPMs, it's easy for that piston to overcome the combustion and continue to, it's easy for the crank, I should say, to overcome that combustion. When you're starting this thing from a standstill, from 0 RPMs, when that piston is making its way to the top, well, when it's firing near the top, oftentimes the compression will want to drive that piston back down. And that's what we call backfiring. The engine spins backward, that's where it kicks you back. So what you can do is actually retard the spark, and that makes the spark happen a little bit later, and it's a little bit easier for that slow flywheel inertia to work past the combustion there. So most of the time you run under full advance. Your new bikes do this electronically. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was done centrifugally. So it was done with weights and springs that at lower RPM, your engine would retard itself. So, and at idle, when they're at that low RPM, it's just easier on the engine itself to have that spark happen a little bit later. When you're under power, full advance is really how these things like to run. So over on this side again, guys, you got your clutch, which is very easy, and shifter setup, which is what we call a rocker clutch. This is your action here, okay? So the rocker clutch, we heel it down, is like pulling in your clutch on your new bike. So this is the front brake, but for demonstration purposes, a new bike, this would be the clutch. So when you heel this thing down, it's like pulling in the clutch, right? So you heel down, shift into gear. First, on this bike particularly, 47 and up, first gear's back, second, third, and fourth. So first gear's back, and then the toe itself, you ease into the toe, and that's what allows you to take off. And do I have air in the tires? Good, we can ride this thing around. I'll show you guys how it works. So fuel shut off right here, very simple. This is like a plunger that goes all the way down, needle and seat in the bottom of the fuel line. They're split tanks connected with a crossover line underneath. There's not a top crossover line, so the right side gas tank is actually vented, and it allows this tank to drain into this side. So this has a spring that the previous owner put in here, which pushes it up automatically. But as you open this, just unscrewing it is on, and then you pull it up for reserve. So we're going to go ahead and take you through the process. Last thing I forgot is the choke. This is your choke lever right here. So a bike that hasn't run in, say, a week, it's probably been a week or 3 since we cranked this bike up. What we'll do is we turn the fuel on. I'll flip the choke all the way on, okay? Choke plate on the carburetor's closed. We're gonna give it 3 prime kicks. So, left it in first gear. Probably wanna start it in neutral. Okay, so 3 prime kicks. 1, 2, 3 prime kicks. Give it a 4th just for fun. Pull the choke off. Now the choke has several positions. You've got all the way on and all the way off. When I start a bike, I like to leave it one click on. It always depends too. You start a bike in 25-degree weather, that choke position is going to be a different place. Ignition here, a little bit of spark retard. Kick it and go. Let this thing warm up for a minute. All right, check it out. Real easy to do. Heel down, ease it into gear, toe to go. So as you start to move into the toe, the bike wants to walk a little bit. It's really easy to use. Now what's really nice about this is you can leave that thing, look, we're in first gear. Still in first gear. All right, back in a minute.
Hey, guys, if you're just joining us or you've been watching for a while, we're doing a walkthrough through the museum, talking about some of our favorite bikes, some of the rarest bikes here. That right there was a 1947 original paint Harley Davidson Knucklehead. Now we're doing all this today to just make you aware that in less than a week, so 7 days from today, we're going to be giving away our 2024 Wheels Through Time raffle bike, which is a 1936 Harley Davidson Knucklehead. So you can get the tickets down below. They're pinned here in the video, or you can go to winthisbike.com to get your tickets, and you could be the one riding home on that bike next week.
What do you think, man?
Looking good, man.
This thing's an absolute sweetie. We got this bike in Chattanooga about a year ago right now, right? A year ago right now. This bike was in the basement. Linda and her husband had this bike for, I think, probably 40 years.
Yeah.
Bike hadn't run in almost 30. Neat thing about this bike is Linda's husband, this was the neighborhood Harley. And he was 10, 12, 14 years old, saw this bike cruising around the neighborhood. Point in his life, he says, I'm going to own that motorcycle when I grow up. And believe it or not, by the time he was in his mid-20s, he ended up buying the bike off the first owner. Had it all those years, kept it very beautifully original. I'm talking hardly a thing on this motorcycle has been changed, down to the original type of tires. Now, Linda called us. The thing was, her husband passed maybe 13 or 14 years ago. Linda loved all of his machines as much as he did. She never got rid of anything. And eventually it came to a point as she started to get older, she just realized, I need to find good homes for these machines. So she called me about the 47 Knucklehead, and Chris and I headed right over. We actually pulled the thing out of the basement and got it running right there in the garage, or right there in the yard. It was literally one of the highlights of my year. It was just to find a bike like this in its originality like this, 29,000 mile motorcycle, it just never happens. And then to be able to pull that thing out, Linda hung right there with us the whole time.
Well, and it was so cool to hear her tell the stories, that when their early years of dating and getting married, that she used to ride on the back of this. Now you'll notice there's no seat back there, so she was riding on the rear fender, as they would take this bike out around the neighborhood. Yeah,
tough lady. No doubt. That was a ton of fun. Made for an awesome afternoon. I was going to ride the bike home from Chattanooga, and then we got down and looked at that tire and thought, you know what, that's not going to make it 10 miles. So I don't know if you guys can see how bad that tire is, but that's like fabric. So the rubber's gone. Luckily, I was at the antique bike meet in Wauseon, and I found two original, this is called a Firestone Deluxe Champion tire. Found two lightly used ones. They're not new old stock, but they're lightly used. So we're going to put that original rubber back on this thing. So such an easy starter, and that's the beauty of these 61s. Just like the bike we're raffling off in a week, the 61 cubic inch jobs, you can start them so easy. You could probably fire it up with your hand. They just start it up, key off, key on. You don't even have to touch the throttle. They just are such friendly, easy to use machines, really balanced. really smooth. The 61s don't have the vibration that the bigger bikes do. So really excited to find that machine a new home. We're going to be drawing the ticket right around 2 o'clock next Saturday. So guys, make sure you get tickets down below. Right down below, we've got all of our packages. Go to winthisbike.com. wheelsthroughtime.com. You can head over and get some merch in the museum's online store. Come to the raffle, guys. We're coming up really fast.
Yeah, and somebody had asked earlier, and I was going to address it here at the end, about lodging in the area. So thankfully, during the flood events, Maggie Valley was not affected as much as everybody else. So as far as I know, there were only maybe 1 or 2 of the hotels that have had to close. Everything else is open and operational. They're ready for you guys to come. So you guys go ahead and make plans to be here next Saturday. You still have time to make your plans.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Maggie Valley, man, is there's 2,500 hotel rooms right in this little stretch of town with just a couple miles. This time of year, no problem calling and getting a reservation. It's going to be an awesome weekend. We're going to be running a bunch of the rarer machines. We're going to fire up the Crocker.
Yep.
We're going to be running the Harley TA shaft drive Knucklehead trike. We've got a couple other bikes that you haven't seen yet. We're going to be unveiling a bike that may or may not be being raffled off in 2025. You might get to see for the first time. Anyway, so but that 36 Knuckle, guys, it's coming up super fast. Incredibly excited. It's always the biggest event of the year for us, and it's like this is our season coming to really a culmination. This winter time, we're going to dig in real hard and make some really awesome advancements and changes inside the museum. We're going to be doing a new exhibit coming up, and then this coming Saturday, though, man, it's like adrenaline's on high. Yeah. Everybody here's got their helmet. Couple guys bring trailers because you never know. I'm hoping if the person's here, they ride it home.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. It's been a few years since we've had the winner on site, so that's all more reason to be here. Maybe you'll be the one who wins and is here on the day. You can take your first ride that afternoon while everybody's still here.
They have free foot clutch lessons.
Yeah.
Chris and I are going to give you a foot clutch lesson. If you don't already know, we've actually had over the years 1 or 2 guys that have an old bike actually win, which was wild. And then we've had guys that never rode motorcycle in their life that are now old bike riders, having won the machine. So it's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the other parts is like seeing a lot of the guys who've won previously will come back, bring their bikes back. So it's a great day. We'll have food trucks here. We're going to be giving door prizes away all day. Like Matt said, you're going to hear all these bikes fire up throughout the day. But then the pinnacle of the day is one person is going to walk away with that 1936 Knucklehead.
Exciting. 2 o'clock, guys. Like I said, make sure you get your tickets. If you aren't how do you say it? If you ain't in it,
you can't win it.
So but come early, guys. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Chris and I and Andy. You guys didn't meet Tony today. Jake, who some of you guys have been here before, might have met Jake. We're all going to be roaming on the floor, firing bikes up, sharing history. Like Chris said, all sorts of things happening. Excited for the weekend, guys. So stay tuned. Get your tickets. Remember Tuesday. We were going live again. We're going to be doing the last service on that 36 Harley that's going home to one of you guys' garage. So, hey, thanks for tuning in with the live, guys. Looking forward to seeing you. Looking forward to giving that motorcycle away. In the meantime, hug those tickets tight. Get some more. And thanks for all your support, guys. We'll see you next time. Yep.